All right, I have Magda Kay on the show today. She's an intimacy expert, tantra teacher, and conscious relating coach. She helps men and women liberate their sexual energy, feel more pleasure, and experience more intimacy in their lives. I think we could all use a little bit more of that. Magda, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Joel.
I am really excited to talk to you. I've had some sex experts, I guess you could say, but I've had no one on the show like you that when the energy that you bring, really from what I see, this more consciousness kind of sexual energy, which I'm really excited to talk to you about because I think a lot of us, including myself, have suppressed a lot of this energy and thought that sex is bad. And then we grow up in a very boring sexual life. And I don't think it's very pleasurable. And here I am now, 42, almost doing things that maybe I didn't even do 20 years ago. Right. And I think it's actually really important. So this is going to be a great time to chat with you. But, there's so many experts out there right now, intimacy experts, tantra experts. Like, how did you stumble along this path? Was it a pain to purpose story?
This question always makes me laugh, at least internally, because when you look back to when you were a kid and, who did you want to become? I wanted to be a dancer, an actress, or like do some biology. It's not like I ever dreamed of that, And
Right.
even like, I don't know, like
I don't even know
50.
if that's like a job profession title that you can look up. Like,
And to
what
be
is
fair, it
like
would
the
be very
highest paying job that comes
inappropriate.
with? Yeah.
And it would be very inappropriate for someone really young to want to do this. So even I, to be honest, like I've been doing this for like a decade. Even I today still have to sometimes pause and just like, wow, what happened? How did I get here? How did I move? Because I used to work for corporate. So how did I go from the corporate world to doing this? Well, so let me tell you. I know you talk about this a lot. So, a lot of how we show up as an adult really starts in childhood and how we are raised by our parents. So I love my parents. They're amazing. Unfortunately, the one thing they never gave me is an example of a happy couple. So I grew up extremely cynical about love to the point that, when I saw people like holding hands, I literally thought it's either lame or it's fake. So I stayed away from relationships. I didn't want to have anything to do with this. Deep inside, I was terrified that I am actually like my mom. My mom is a difficult person, let's just say that. And so I stayed away from everything. And I got into a first proper relationship when I was 27 only. Now, so this was my first love, first real relationship. And I'm sure everyone can relate that, you're like, oh, it's going to last forever. And then guess what? It didn't. So it was a very painful moment for me. I had suicidal thoughts. Like I wanted to hurt myself. It really hit me deeply. But again, it's because it played on all of my personal traumas. But the reason actually why we started falling apart was because I wasn't having orgasm. So, for all the women who are in that situation, it feels extremely embarrassing, to be honest. So we try to say we fake it because like we don't want to say this. So when you kind of hear that this is why your partner doesn't desire you anymore, it just really hurt. And so we're talking like, like I said, a little bit over a decade ago, and Tantra wasn't really a
Magda,
thing.
really quick, I want to interject.
Yeah.
Did you at the time did you think it was just normal to not have orgasms? Were you like, yeah, no, this is like pleasurable, even though I'm not having orgasms? Or did you actually know like, oh my God, this is a problem? Like, because I've
So
heard women say that before, like, oh yeah, I have sex all the time, but I don't have orgasms. In my head, I'm thinking, isn't that a problem? But they make it seem like it's not. It's not a big deal.
So I don't think any woman ever truly thinks it's not a big deal. I think we present it as not a big deal because we really don't know what to do. And, when I look back at what I have gone through and understanding what I need to be able to really relax when I'm with a partner and how often I don't get what I need because men are not equipped. Oh, I'm getting some crazy video effects. So often men don't have enough information to guide a woman the way she needs to be guided. And so once I started understanding all of this, it's like, well, it makes sense why so many women struggle. And we don't know what to ask for because women don't understand what it is that they're missing to be able to orgasm. Now, in my case specifically, my brain has this incredible tendency to always play the worst case scenario. So I
Only
have,
your brain? Really?
so well, that's
Just
the
your
thing.
brain. My brain
Exactly.
does
So
the same thing. great.
So that's exactly the thing. I thought, as I think everyone, oh my God, I'm the only one having these thoughts. And then when you find a sort of like a spiritual community or just like, a men's circle, a women's circle, you realize I'm not the only one. But when that breakup was happening, because you asked what I thought, it's like a common issue, not a big deal. I honestly thought, and I'm like quoting myself, that I am just fucked up. I thought there's something wrong with me. Again, because my mind would immediately go into, it's my fault, I'm doing something wrong. So this is why also it was so painful for me to go through this breakup. Like I said, it played on my deepest wounds and fears. But so this is when I decided to go into tantra and sexual healing, which, now if you Google this, there's so much, but like a decade ago, that was not the case. So, I heard something from one person, I heard of this school, I heard of this practice, and I was like, what do you mean they do that? And, when I needed some time, I needed to meet the right people. It took about a year before I landed in a tantric community where I went fully into sexual practices, sexual healing practices. This is basically where I focused on myself to heal the old trauma, different like layers of abuse, and open for my first orgasm. And so this is also where I got all the knowledge and eventually decided to teach this, just because, it's like people were coming with questions, and I started realizing, and I know it sounds a bit like this reluctant hero story, which I hate using, but it's what I'm aware of now is that the majority of people on our planet, what they understand and what they experience in terms of sexuality, maybe that's like 30% of what's actually there, what's available. It's like, imagine you're always having French fries and you think that this is what food is. And you're not aware of everything that's out there. And so, when I realized it, I was like, okay, well, I think people should know this. And so slowly that's how I arrived to doing what I do.
But you actually also you traveled to like Bali. You traveled to
Yes.
some like really cool places to learn this. This wasn't like you read tantra in a book and you're like, I'm an expert now. Like, I mean, you actually went and like studied under some, I think Taoist and tantric teachers, right?
Yes. So the breakup and the relationship and the breakup happened when I was living in Malaysia. And then from there, I went to India, I went to Bali, and I went to Thailand. So I was in that area for over a decade, really. Southeast Asia is incredible. This is really the source of these specific teachings. There's a lot of Tantra kind of hidden, but there's a lot of Tantra in Bali, in Thailand. In India, it's kind of funny. It's where it's from, but during colonization, they kind of just removed all of it. It was really shamed. So it's not really there. But I was definitely I was getting the knowledge from the source. And I lived in a tantric community, I think, for about 6 years. I'm really bad at remembering the exact details, but I did live in a community that meditated every day. We did rituals every full moon, every new moon, every evening, something. So we were actually doing these things. Absolutely.
Yeah. Wow. I want to come back to that, but something you said, only 30% of the population is understanding sex at the highest of high levels
Wait,
and what
so
they could actually experience.
yes, what I said, what I mean is that the experience that most of us have is about
I
30%
couldn't
of
agree
what's
more.
truly out there. Yeah.
I think you're 100% right. I think the numbers are even lower. And I was even talking to my wife the other day. I was telling her, we our relationship is so great now. And I'm like, I think like 90% of the population is walking around, like you said, thinking that they have a good relationship. But like you said, they're eating McDonald's French fries and they have no idea they could be having like a steak meal every day. And I think it's also, even to your point about sex as well. And it's something even my wife and I were talking about, like, hey, how could we even take our relationship is so good now where it wasn't in the past? How can we take that experience, because we've been together for 15 years, but I can't say that the experience of sex has been the best. And there's so much more I don't know. So that's why I'm excited to talk to you. But before we get into some of those tactical things, I'm wondering, what does a country like Thailand, India, Bali, what do they understand about sex that we don't as Americans?
So, well, the funny thing is that all the sex that happens in these countries, it kind of happens in secrecy because these countries are very traditional and it would actually be very offensive. And so just so you know, some of those schools have been closed. Some of the people have been deported for doing these workshops. But I think the reason why, and I know I may sound a bit woohoo for some people here, but these places have very specific energy. These are countries that are very spiritual. You know, if you go to Bali, I loved what one local man told me, this sentence. He said, in Bali, God is very close because everything is a place to worship God, like the tree, the waterfall. So it's very spiritual. It's very present. In the West, we are stubbornly believing that there's nothing more than what I can see and touch. And it's a little ridiculous because even science, like, you know, we have, for example, phenomenon of a phantom limb, which is when you lose a limb, people still have sensations. And like, you know, from the perspective that there's no energy, it doesn't make sense. There's a lot of things that science is observing but doesn't have answers to yet. And yet in the West, we're so stubbornly believing there's nothing more than just the physical experience. And in especially Southeast Asia, you really have this concept of energy very present. You know, you have Hinduism and Buddhism, which are very different. I don't know if we can really call them religions, but they really focus on working with
Way of
energy.
being, right?
Yeah, we have yoga, tai chi, you know, all of the practices where you're meant to cultivate your energy. And we don't have this in the West. And so this is why these places usually really attract people who want to grow in those fields, just because the land and the community is supportive of the teachings. Like, I know it sounds crazy, but for anyone, if you ever go into any of these communities, it's like, you start processing so much and you're tired and you don't understand why, because you don't really do much. But like, it's like you're rewiring your subconscious, you're changing beliefs. It's like, because, you know, we're impacting each other, right? Like, you know, the community you're with, the 5 people you spend most of your time with, they basically, you know, create who you are. So it's same there. And it's really incredible, I have to be honest.
Yeah, that is so cool. And I haven't been to any of those countries, so Thailand is on my list anyways. And I was just thinking as you were talking is that it really just seems like there's this level of presence that we don't have here in the West. And even I thought you were going to say, which the way I feel about sex, it's very transactional. It's like, hey, it's a Friday, Saturday night. We got some time. Let's have some sex. And then, you know, the kids can go to, I can't see you during the week. I got business meetings. I'll have some sex on Friday at 2 p.m. and Saturday, 8 a.m. And then we're good. Okay. Whereas it sounds like just over there is such an embodiment of sex and presence. And I think even one of the things, one of your most downloaded videos that I was watching, and I was like, wow, this is great, is how to have sex without penetration, right?
Yes.
And it's like, how is that possible? How is that possible? But I think, again, we're diving into the world of more presence, more just being in the moment and not having any outcome or desire. It's just, how can I just be with my wife? For me, how can I just be with her and not expect an orgasm or an outcome? It's just presence.
Yeah, and you know, I'll give you an example that may seem not related, but it is, trust me, I'll connect it. So a friend of mine started traveling to Norway. He loves it there. And so because he's been there quite a few times, he got to see the beautiful Northern Light. And he told me that there are trips, especially from Asia, from China, that are organized to see Northern Lights. So what happens? These people pay a lot of money from China, and they come to Norway, and then, for example, they don't see them, right? They don't see the lights, and they're all disappointed because they just had this one goal in mind. But if you focus on, hey, let me go to Norway, let me see what it's like, you know, up north on our globe, and see that. And then if you see Northern Lights, it's an extra point, but you're not going to be disappointed if it doesn't happen. And also, if you just go there to see the lights, you're not going to pay attention to anything else that happens there. So I think it's kind of the same with sex. It can be a beautiful experience if you choose for it to be an experience versus a specific goal that you want to reach.
That is so good.
Okay. I'm just going to
I love that. I want to dive into a little bit about couples, and then we'll break it out into men.
Joel, sorry for stepping in for a second. I don't know why there's a massive delay on my end. Like when I look at my video and where I am speaking, it's like, can you see me normally when I talk?
I do see you now. It's fuzzy, but it seems like the video and audio is caught up finally.
Okay. hopefully.
Maybe not.
So as long as you're gonna get the good,
Maybe not, actually.
good footage, it's fine. Okay. So I feel like I may have delay from how I see you and how I hear you. So just in case, be aware of that. It's so weird.
Yeah, there's a slight delay. Usually it works out okay with Riverside because it'll download a copy to your hard drive and then it'll give it to me. So it usually preserves a really good copy, even though internet and stuff is bad. Although one of my episodes just the other day, there was a delay and I was like, oh, it's no big deal. Riverside will clean it up, and it didn't get cleaned up. I'm not sure
Okay.
why. I think it was whoever. Anyways.
Okay, I think I'm more aligned now. Okay, I think we're okay now. Should be fine. Sorry for that.
We'll go for it. We'll go for it. All right, I wanted to ask you about couples because we're on this topic about couples. So, what do you? And I know you work with men, women individually, and couples. You do all of them. What do you think are the key elements for couples that they can use to reignite that spark and bring back passion into, especially a long-term relationship?
So I would say there are two things. One is to take your relationship out of your house. So I'm not married, I'm not with kids, so this is where you will have more experience. But if you think of how you are at home, you're probably wearing your sweats. If there is a stain, who cares? Your hair may be greasy, who cares? Right? Your wife probably the same, because who cares, we are home. So it's the opposite of looking sexy and dressing up. And, people are like, it's not about, let's not be superficial. I'm like, well, it does make a difference how we look. It really does. Now, the second thing is that when we're at home, we know it's like, we're housemates. There's all the things we have to do in the house. Like, for example, clean the toilet and then do the dishes and put things back. And it's just a very different dynamic. In fact, it's the opposite dynamic to desire and passion. And it's very often impossible for couples to change their house and their environment to kind of like cue more intimacy and desire. So it's much easier to simply go outside, and this is where you experience the romance and the passion. So this, ideally, I tell my couples, do it once a week, like have one evening a week that's sacred just to you as a couple. And then you go out, you have a date, you go for dinner, you do dress up, both of you. You pick a really nice place that's going to stimulate all of your senses. And then ideally, like, have sex. But again, if you can rent a hotel room, even better, instead of coming back home. Or, send your kids away to grandparents and then have a sexy evening at home. And honestly, people sometimes feel like, oh, I don't have time, etc. I'm talking about one evening a week. If you've been together for many years, honestly, one evening a week is all you need. You don't need more. But if you keep doing this, that one evening every week for the whole year, and then the next year, that's enough touch point to maintain intimacy and passion. The problem is that we don't do anything for months. So that's the first thing. It's just like, change the environment. Don't force it. Just change the environment and you'll see that you're going to react differently. This is why when we travel, right, it's like suddenly you're more passionate about your partner because we're changing the environment. Now, the second thing is playfulness. We are so serious when it comes to sex. And one of the best things we can do is just laugh, be kind of cheeky, flirt with each other, think of different games. Like, I love games. I love, for example, I personally love going to different kink clubs, not to interact with people, but it's because I love dressing up. And I think it's such a cool, energy and environment to be in. So maybe you and your partner want to just go to a sex club just to be there, just to watch, or watch porn together, or have some, there are funny different games you can play, role playing, just have fun with this. Again, don't be so serious about this because seriousness kills the vibe. Now, we're going to get a little bit woohoo again. So, I come from the tantric lineage where we talk about chakras. So chakras are kind of like your organs for your energy. Actually, sexuality and creativity is the same chakra. So what it means is that by doing creative things, by allowing your fantasy to be, used and active, you're automatically stimulating the energy of pleasure and sensuality in romance. So these two things are, well, basically it's like, different sides of the same coin. So we really should be incorporating more playfulness and curiosity. And these two things, honestly, you like that's enough for every couple to have a great intimate life.
Those two are amazing. I can those are actionable, and I can bring those into my life right away. I also heard that this is interesting too, and this really sparked something for myself recently. Is I know in the past I had big money blocks, which was like, I don't know if I'm worthy. Like, do I deserve to be charging this much for my coaching program? Like these crazy ideas. And I was reading a book recently, and it was talking about chakras. And by the way, I love the woo, so keep bringing the woo woo to us in this episode. And the guy was saying that the root chakra, I think it was the root, as you're talking about, with creativity and sexuality, is also tied into money and business. Is that true?
Okay, so we have the first two chakras are the ones that are of most interest to us. So the root chakra, which is at the perineum, this is the money. Mostly it's like safety and security. And in our world, that means money. And this is the source of all the animalistic desires. So this is your desire to fuck, not to make love, but to fuck. Now, the second chakra, that's the desire to make love. It's more about pleasure, sensuality, and relationships. And that second chakra is about creativity. So really for the best human intimate life, we want the energy of both. So we want the strong root chakra because this gives you vitality, that increases your libido. This is what strengthens your erection, what allows you to last long, gives you strong orgasm. But we want the second one as well to make sure that it's not just purely animalistic sex like you see on Animal Planet, but that there is also intimate connection. But absolutely, I think where you were going with this is that money and sex is connected, right?
Correct. Yeah, correct.
Exactly.
So that I was telling my wife, I said, listen, we need to get our sex life even better right now because that's tied to how much money we're going to make. And she was all about it. So I thought that was also a playful way to increase our just having the fun that you're talking about and that playfulness because it's all connected. And I thought that was so interesting too, because as guys, especially I think the go-getter, entrepreneur, alpha kind of guys, and I would put myself in that camp, we're very good at doing. We're very good doers and task oriented. And I think that gets in the way though. And when you try to think about like, why is my business not succeeding? Why is this, I'm doing this, and this, it should be succeeding. Well, maybe there's something that you're missing. And I'm not saying it's going to be sexuality all the time or having a great sex life, but I think it could, that's an area that probably needs to be exposed. And if that got better, I'd be really interested to know if the sex life got better, if people's businesses got better. Do you ever see like a tie in with that?
So it's not like there's any specific research to this, but there is definitely a few interesting stories that I can add here. So first of all, if you think back to Think and Grow Rich, there's literally one paragraph where he talks about energy transmutation. So he talks about what in tantra we call sex magic practice, where you actually channel your sexual energy through your body and you channel it into specific goals. So this is the practice that's linked to non-ejaculation, because when you ejaculate, you're pushing the energy out of your body. But men, I don't know if you've probably heard of this because it's quite popular these days, but men can learn to keep the ejaculation in and pull the energy into their body and then use this energy as the creative force for creating the business and goals. But let me also point something else. Notice even today, if you think of Elon Musk, he's probably like one of the top, successful people. I think he has like 10 kids. So you'll often see, if you look through history, that like the biggest leaders, and we can argue if they're good or bad, but they definitely accomplished a lot. They were very, very sexual. Very sexual. So basically, it's about the sexual energy moving through your body. And you can use it by having sex or by channeling this energy. But if you think of the sexual energy is essentially life force energy. And so if someone is really shut down, if someone is really suppressed, there's a lot of shame around anything related to sexuality, you will be naturally blocking yourself, blocking your natural expression as a human being, right? So it's about allowing this energy to move through your body. This doesn't have to mean you're having lots of sex, because again, you can work with this energy in different ways, but it's about feeling juicy in life, like feeling that your body is awake. It's like there's this subtle vibration in your body. And that honestly like impacts everything. So absolutely what you said. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all connected. I always tell people there's no such thing as work-life balance. These things are all connected. If you're leaking energy from your sex life, that I guarantee it's bleeding over to how you show up as a man in your family, how you show up as a leader in the business world or your career, and even in your health. They're all connected. So I love that. I love how you tied that in. Let's talk about orgasms and that idea of mastering ejaculation, because you mentioned Elon Musk. Well, if he had 10 kids, he's clearly not holding on to his ejaculation. He's having a lot of kids.
No, he's not.
Talk to me about, talk to me about the benefit of actually mastering ejaculation and why it might be prudent for guys to go multiple times not ejaculating in their intimate relationships. And one thing I wanted to highlight, I talked to John Gray, the famous author from Mars, or Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. I think he told me the other day that he went 10 hours having an erection or having a 10-hour like sex, I don't know, sex party, but like an intimate 10-hour session with his wife. And I was like, John, no way. Like, that's bullshit. Is John full of crap, or is he doing that? And then also, yeah, what's the benefit of us men mastering ejaculation so that we can reach full body orgasms?
So I didn't know he practiced that. Very impressive, especially at his age. But I think it's great because he's exactly demonstrating one of the benefits of the practice. Well, okay. Let me start by saying the full, you could say, proper practice of non-ejaculation is this. It's not about, I don't know why this happens. Okay. It's not about forcefully keeping the semen in and then have blue balls. This is not that. So I've heard from men, they're like, oh yeah, I haven't come in 3 months. I'm like, who told you you're not meant to come? You're not meant to ejaculate, but you're meant to have an orgasm, or you're meant to have sensation. So the actual practice is, it's not physical thing per se. It's you're learning to move the energy through your body. So it means that instead of letting the energy, when you feel like the sensations build up, instead of letting this energy come out with your sperm, you're pulling it in, but then you're pulling it up through the body. And it's very important, again, when we talk about chakras, that it gets to the heart or above, because anything below that will still create tension. And you end up having blue balls and you're not going to enjoy the sensations afterwards. But if it goes to the heart or above, it kind of moves through your body. And from that place, it's possible for you to have a full body orgasm, which is an energy experience, or like physical and energy experience. So that's the full practice. Now, I understand that not all men want to go all the way there, because it does take practice to get there. It's a bit like, if you want to have abs, everyone can have abs, but it's work, right? So I get it. Not all men.
How fast do you see men being able to master this? Because I'll let you know, I've tried doing some of this work, and like you said, I'm like, man, this is way harder than I thought. And so I kind of I'll do it for a week, and then I give up again, and I start for a week. What's a typical time frame? If guys are consistent with the practice, how fast do you see them being able to kind of do pretty good?
So it's an individual thing based on a few things. So imagine if someone, again, comes to the gym and they say, I want to have a 6-pack. Well, it's going to depend on how much they train, how they eat, but also where they are now, what kind of body composition they already have. And like some people genetically build muscle faster. Also on the gender, because men and women are going to do it differently. It's same here. So it's both your physical health that impacts how the energy can move through the body, but mostly it's your energy. So if you have a lot of kind of blockages, if there's a lot of tension in the body, then the energy won't be able to move as much. So you will struggle. But here's another thing. So for example, for you, you're very fiery. Fire, which means you're more like a train. So for you to control your sexual energy is going to be much more difficult than for a man who's more soft and more calm in nature, just because your energy is way more intense. It's like way more energy for you to pull up than it is for someone else. So it is very individual. But I will tell you like this, a lot of it is also like mental state. It has, like, for example, I remember when I first heard about energy orgasm, and I was like, I didn't know what it was. I just watched the video, and like a few weeks later, I woke up having a full energy orgasm. Why? Because I had zero mental resistance to it. Later, I started practicing, and I'm like, it's hard, and now it's really hard for me to achieve, right? So it's same here. I've seen men who heard about the idea for the first time, and they're like, well, that's interesting, right away. Right away. So it is individual. But this is, again, why some men are not necessarily interested in the full practice. But if you learn to pull the energy in, if you learn to circulate it, you can still choose to ejaculate in the end, but you get to last longer. And that's what John Gray was talking about. And we have kind of like this joke in the tantric community, because it's like, well, if you don't ejaculate and you can have multiple orgasms, then when on earth do you stop? And the answer is when you get tired. So literally, like, how long you're going to last at this point will be determined by your overall level of vitality and stamina.
Okay. Wow. Okay, that is some really really good stuff. Talk to me about let's take a quick detour here, because I want to make sure that women that are listening to this podcast right now, I probably have like about 50. It's like pretty split in the middle. So there's a lot of women also that are listening. What do you see for them? I know you work also with a lot of women that have sexual trauma. And so how does, and by the way, I'm sure trauma can be just like you said, like with your upbringing, and even I was telling you my upbringing, very like, Puritan style, like it wasn't that serious, but also like we're not talking about sex in the home, and like next thing you know, you're 27 in your first relationship. I don't know if that's sexual trauma, but it's just the idea that like sex is bad. We don't talk about that,
Yes.
right?
Yes,
And so
exactly.
talk to me about just, and then there's also the sexual trauma where, assault and other things like that. But how do you help women become multi-orgasmic, and how does that overall transformation help with their success and healing their own traumas?
So I love what you said. And it's exactly true about the trauma. So trauma isn't something massive. The actual definition of trauma is that it's something that your nervous system is not able to deal with in the moment. And so it can be a small event, but if it's too much for your nervous system, it is trauma. And the thing about women is that we are naturally more receptive and we take things in more. We are, well, please don't hate me for saying this, but we are, genetically the weaker gender. Like we are smaller, the percentage of muscle mass is smaller for us. We're not as strong as men. So physically, we are not as safe as men are. And so when a woman gets in some way traumatized, even through small things, it really hits us. And especially when it comes to sexuality. So again, if we look energetically, men are, when you are having sex and your sexuality, it's actually a place of your power, because you are giving the energy, you're in the masculine flow, right? You're thrusting, you're ejaculating. For a woman receives. And anytime we receive anything, this is when we are vulnerable. So this is why we have way more sexual trauma in women than in men. So I always say that practically every woman on this planet has some level of sexual trauma. It doesn't mean that she was forced. It's just enough that when she was a little girl, people were picking her up because, oh, she's so cute. And you learn that it doesn't depend on you whether someone touches you or not. Right? So again, it's not that someone did anything on purpose to hurt you, but the body registers things in a certain way. And so I think it would be very helpful for women just to assume I'm probably shut down around my sexuality. There's probably something uncomfortable deep in my body that I'm scared to see. Like that first step is really important, because a big problem, and I went through this myself, is that if there is a painful memory and we hide it somewhere in the body, we hide it deep into subconscious mind, well, we hide it so that we don't ever feel it. So consciously, we're convinced it's not there. So then when you do any healing practices, what happens is that there is a lot of resistance. right? So if you will tell a woman, oh, for example, the reason why you're not having vaginal orgasm is because there is some trauma, a lot of women will say, oh, because penetration is just for men, just, touch my clitoris and we'll be fine. Because she's scared to actually go through the process. So it would really be helpful for women just to assume that there's something painful hidden in your body. And that if you get to see it and release it, you will open yourself for much more. And going back to what you said before about money, it's all connected. So you're going to open yourself for more pleasure, more orgasm, but also better relationship, better health, more abundance, more luck. It's all connected.
Yeah, love that. Couldn't agree more. Magda, we're also seeing a really what I've seen also, and having done a lot of work with couples and men and women, is that we're seeing a huge rise over the last probably 20 years of women being more empowered, which is a great thing. And we've got women entrepreneurs. But from what I've learned and seen, this energy is not that radiant divine feminine, and it's more this alpha masculine energy that women have to take on to be workers. And I totally get that, and they should do that. But what I see is a huge problem in the world right now is them being able to come back into that radiant divine feminine that they naturally are. And I also see us guys not being able to do a good job to help them. They need to be helped sometimes, and we don't do a good job of doing that as leaders. Do you see that? And is there anything that you would tell these women entrepreneurs, these very go-getter women out there, like, hey, these are some things you may want to be thinking about, and here's how you can tackle it?
So I love this conversation. And for me, it's actually a very deep conversation. So the feminine energy comes out when she feels safe. So the reason why so many women are not in the feminine energy is simply because women don't feel safe. Safety, see, another conversation, because unfortunately online, a lot of men mock it. Safety is subjective. So it doesn't matter whether you would actually attack her or not. It's whether she feels that you could attack her or not. Subjectively, so many women don't feel safe. Now, objectively, many women are also not safe, right? But basically, the point is that women don't feel safe. Another thing is this. So we had this division of roles, right? Women in this feminine energy doing this, men in the masculine energy doing that. And notice what was happening for quite a long time. For a man to be in the masculine energy was praised and valued by our society. But we stopped valuing women being feminine. And even today, this is something that absolutely puzzles me. And it's especially bad in the US. Like being a mother is considered like your side hobby that you should just squeeze in while still working 8 hours a day. Because I think you guys have like 2 months of maternity leave. Is that correct in the US?
It's something very, very small. Yeah.
It's ridiculous. Like it's absolutely ridiculous. When a woman has a baby, and we actually know this, it's not any woohoo theory. A woman's brain changes how it thinks. It's literally a woman is not able to think logically as much because her whole body is now turned to be extremely in tune with the baby. But for example, a woman will start lactating the moment that the baby is hungry. So there's this incredible magical connection. Instead, we think this is, nothing special, and we're just like think that, who cares that she is giving a baby? Like we don't appreciate the feminine things. And so why would women do it? Like it's fucking hard work to be pregnant. It's hard work to be nurturing and caring. It's hard work to take care of the house. It's hard work to take care of the baby. And if the society will keep telling me that it's worthless, then why would I do this? I'm going to do what the society believes that it's actually valuable. So I'm going to do the same things that men do because I also want to be appreciated and validated. So the change, actually, it's not as much from women. The change needs to come from the society. The society needs to start valuing feminine energy, and then the feminine energy will naturally show up. Like if I think of myself, when I'm let's say if I speak, whether it's a city or a group of people, when I'm among people who allow me to be feminine, I become feminine. But when I'm around, for example, men who like, they're like, oh, look at her, look at those boobs, you know, and like things like that, or like, oh, let's bang her. And I hear that. I'm like, do you think I'm going to be feminine in your presence? So for the women, we need to remember that us being too much in the masculine is a form of trauma response. It's a form of protecting ourselves. But the world needs to understand that you cannot force women to be feminine. Like, this will not work. You have to start appreciating women for what they can do, for what they offer that's unique to them. Unless we do that, don't count on femininity coming back.
I love that, and I couldn't agree more. In my own journey to healing my own relationship, and just some of the teachers and some of the books that I was reading, one of the big things that you just said that stood out for me, and it really changed my paradigm. And looking at my wife, and I will even say this not in a bad way, but like her moodiness, right? Like her moodiness would sometimes just wreck me, but I started to see the value of her moodiness. Not always. I'm not saying like that sounds ridiculous, but what I'm saying is I started to see that energy and the value of it. Actually, I was like, oh my God, that's like actually a beautiful thing. She's this radiant divine feminine. Her criticizing me sometimes isn't that she's trying to be mean. She's actually trying to make me more conscious. And when I started reframing that and realizing what she was saying, I stopped blaming her moodiness or some of her like criticisms as an attack, and just really looking at it. Oh my God, that is such a beautiful polarity that's helping me become a better man and into the masculine. And that was a big reframe for me. So I agree that the radiant divine feminine is not there anymore. It's completely missing, and it's not even expressed or allowed in society. And we're missing the boat. And so if we can do that as leaders in our home, as guys, to kind of help bring our women back, I mean, that's at least a start, because society is, like you said, is not going to change anytime soon, at least in the West.
Yeah, it will take a while. And in fact, when I see some of the conversations and like thought leaders, I like feel like they want to go like the opposite way. Like I hear, for example, conversations such as, that we should come up with science that would allow men to get pregnant and carry babies. And all I'm thinking is like, are you nuts? Like literally nature gave you this incredible responsibility. Like no matter what, no one can deny that women are indispensable in the society. And you want to give this away? But why? Because we look at it as a burden instead of a gift. And a few years ago, I led this course for women. It was just 1 year that I did it. Kind of, maybe I should again. And I called it was about feminine superpowers. And what I was talking about was this. So I don't know if are you into like superheroes?
Sure. I mean, I like them. I mean, I'm not a comic book reader. I don't do any of that. But I mean, hey, I like Superman, Batman, just like any other kid growing up.
So I'm definitely a fan of especially like the first movies, Marvel movies. And so I was giving this metaphor. Take Thor, and he has this big hammer. Now imagine that someone told him, hey, why are you carrying this hammer with you? It's so heavy. It's slowing you down. Leave it behind and go to the battlefield without it. And he does that. Now we know it's silly because we know that the hammer is the source of his power. It's his superpower. But it's the same for women. We have been convinced that our superpowers are actually a burden. And so we're trying to get rid of this. And so we really need a massive shift in how we approach certain things in our society. But yes, like you said, I think it will take a while. And we still have a lot of women who just really want to let go of all of this. And they're fighting really hard. And I would say that's a pity, because I think we don't realize that we're actually essentially hurting ourselves in the long term.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I wanted to ask you, I mean, there's so much more. I'm going to have to bring you on for a round two, but what, if people they're listening to this conversation, and I think we hit a lot of big points. And if they're just thinking like, man, I got to get more of Magda, like, what are some of the things that what are some of like the people that come and work with you? Because again, I alluded to earlier that men will work with you individually, women will, and then you also do couples work. But if anybody's out there listening to this conversation, they want to know more about like what you do and how you transform relationships. I mean, I'm even curious of like talking to you about possibly work. So like what does that look like, and what are most people are coming to, what are they seeking from you that you kind of help them remove and get past?
You know, I will say that any form of intimacy coaching, it's still a very new thing. So it encompasses everything. You know, it's sort of like, imagine in the past you had a doctor. You didn't have a cardiologist, right? And a physiotherapist. It was a doctor for a village. And it's a little bit like this now. We don't yet have these specific specialties because it's too early. And so I basically deal with everything. So people come to me with such a variety of challenges. I can tell you that just looking at the recent clients, I've had quite a few couples who just welcomed a baby, and that's a big transition, which again, you will know a lot about. But I have helped a few couples who really moved through this time, like they're on the edge of getting a divorce. So I've worked with couples like this. I often work with men who they're kind of lost about what it means to be a man in today's time, because there's all of these confusing messages. So we worked together helping them discover their inner sense of masculinity, what it's like for them, the true, honest masculinity. With women, I do often work with women who have some sort of blockages, and they're aware of this. They're aware that they're shy, they're suppressed, they're scared, and so we move through that. And then, you know, how we do this, that's individual. So in my work, I combine tantra, which is practices with energy. There's some breath work, sometimes shaking, visualization, with psychology, because I love, love, love psychology. So we bridge these worlds together. But it's a combination of all. And to be honest, a lot of what I do is also mentoring and teaching because, you know, so for example, when I said before, most people get maybe 30% of what sexuality actually is. Did you know there are 11 different types of a female orgasm?
I lost your
Sorry.
sound. The last thing I heard you ask me was, did I know that there was 11 types of orgasms?
Okay, yes. So most people don't. Like when I tell this to people, they're like, what? What are those
I
orgasms?
would
So
have
that's
guessed like 3 or 5, you know.
exactly. And, you know, we know about this famous G spot where there's AKP as well. Then I forgot about another one. So my point is there's so much about sexuality that we don't know about. And the problem is even sexologists don't understand it because sexologists come from the medical world. So there's a lot of information that people need. So I also teach. I teach a lot. I basically give you the information that you never got. And so, you know, through a unique combination of teaching, mentoring, some forms of therapy, some practices, you know, we move to wherever a person needs to go. But it's a very holistic approach. You know, we said this already a couple of times. Our sexuality is not disconnected from the rest of your life. Like we treat it like this, right? I always say it's like we treat sex as like the separate room in our house that we sometimes visit. What you don't understand is that sexuality is like the floor. It's the foundation of everything. So it's going to naturally be connected to all of the other areas of your life. So we look at everything holistically because this is the only way to actually have a profound shift.
So good. So good. Magda, talk about any exciting projects that you're working on right now that you can tell us about, or a new book. I mean, I know you're already a best-selling author, but anything else in the pipeline that we can look forward to?
I do have a few very exciting projects, but it's just like, oh, I finally need to like sit down. So maybe it's in a couple of years, but I'll tell you what I'm really focusing on now. So I opened the School of Intimacy, which was basically me saying, screw you, society, screw your educational system. You don't want to talk about it? Fine. You want to be blocking us on all social media? Fine. I'm going to do my own thing. And it's literally the way it's designed is to be like a proper school. And so I'm still building this. There's already a lot of content and I want to like every year add more information. I want it to be like an ever expanding system, but I really wanted to create something for people where they can just make their sexuality like a constant thing in their life, right? So not that like, oh, let me do a course and that's it, I'm done. Let me read one book. No, it's about just actually being interested in it. I go to the gym a few times a week, right? It's not like, oh, I went today, so I'm done. I don't ever have to train again, right? It's a lifestyle. Same. It's like, yeah, I took a shower this morning, so well, I'm still gonna take a shower tomorrow. It's like it's an ongoing process that we engage in because it keeps our life good. And the longer we do it, the better we get. And I would love for people to start looking at their sex life the same way. And so that's what the School of Intimacy is for. Like, it's a membership site. So I want you to be there. I want you to think of it, oh, I can watch Netflix and waste time, or I can actually get inspiration, get some tools, especially if you're in a relationship, like watch it with your partner, get inspired and practice these things. So if anyone is really interested in diving more, like I just so highly recommend this. Literally any course I have ever created in my life is inside of the School of Intimacy. So I'd say this is what I'm excited about, to keep building this, keep expanding this. And if anyone feels like that this is like sounds exciting, would be amazing to see you inside.
That sounds great. And I always tell everybody too, and you mentioned this earlier, all your work, you were around a tribe, a community of tantric healers for 6 years. I mean, if you are in it, it's always best to be around the people that are doing that work. And so I couldn't agree more. And that's a great opportunity. Do you also do do you jump on and do lives or do group coaching within that group? Or is it just access to the community and some of your courses?
So I'm changing the structure right now. So I don't do live sessions at the moment, but I am offering like an add-on to the membership where you can message me at any time of the day, any day of the week. I limit them because it's a lot of involvement from my side, but there are opportunities, and for sure you can always ask a question. And it's just like I sometimes spontaneously do live Q&As inside of the group if people have questions, just to make sure to be able to answer them. So if you're in the school and you have any question, for sure it's going to get answered. But at the same time, if someone wants to go deeper, like you mentioned, and thank you for saying this, I do offer coaching for men, women, and couples. And some people prefer this, they feel like I really want this one-on-one attention. You offer coaching as well, so you know very well. There are different benefits to different type of offering depending where we are and what we're looking for. So I also love doing coaching because it's incredible when you get everything like designed to your specific needs. Everything is just for you and it's about you. And I definitely find this very fulfilling. So I do take a few one-on-one coaching clients every year. Yes.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. I think for everybody, a great place to start at least would be at the School of Intimacy. And if they feel like they need to go deeper or they want to go faster, then they can work with you one-on-one. So really neat. I know we got to wrap things up. Last but not least, tell Magda Kay, tell everybody where they can connect with you. You have an amazing YouTube channel, tons of information there. I know you're on Instagram. If someone wants to connect with you, learn more about all the exciting stuff you're up to, where's the best way to connect with you? Or if they want to work with you, like we talked about, the School of Intimacy, where should they go, the website, etc.?
So basically just Magda Kay. So it's magdakay.com. It's Magda Kay for YouTube. And unfortunately, it's Magda Kay official on Instagram. Someone already took the name. But basically, if you go online and you put Magda Kay, practically everything you're going to find is going to be mine. There is only one other Magda Kay, and she's a DJ. So as long as it's nothing about music, it's about me. I'm not a DJ. So music, that's not me. Anything else with Magda Kay, that's going to be me.
Amazing. Magda Kay, intimacy expert. Appreciate you so much. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I really had fun, and I hope that you guys get value from this conversation.